Hi everyone. New pattern day is always the best, and we have a good one for you today. Now, if you have been watching the Facebook group, I'm sure you have seen the new pattern already. It was our summer subscription box. So if you're a member of our subscription box program, you received this in the June box. So this is the Willa, and this is the bag that we will be making today. It is what we're calling kind of a travel bag, just an overnight travel bag, not necessarily for all your clothing, but for all those goodies that you need along the way. Your cords, your sunglasses, your maybe jewelry, and it's really secure because you have a nice fold over top. So the way this opens is literally you take the button out and you can open it up. Now, it is a bucket bag. You can see it's pretty much just a circle. Inside you have got, it's a little hard to see because it's dark, but you do have some accordion pockets in there. And those accordion pockets are specifically for the 3 essentials that are part of this collection. So you've got the cord companion, the shade keeper, and the fold and go jewelry case, and each one of those companion pieces fit in the accordion pockets that are inside this bag. So if you're looking to just travel overnight, maybe you just have a couple of days that you're going out of town, you want to keep all of those essentials safe and secure, this is the bag that you can put it in. It is a crossbody bag, so of course it is adjustable and it sits on your body. Kind of in the front, you have the connectors in the back of this bag. Very on trend for the fall. You can see we have a great zipper pocket here in the back, and the zipper pocket is nice and deep. You're going to be able to fit a cell phone in here, no problem. If you want to make the pocket deeper, you can always do that. It is your choice. It is your bag. Do what you would love. Now we have a couple of really cool features here, and you can see this is part of the inspiration bag I saw. It has these little keepers, and what I call these are strap keepers or closure keepers. And those keepers are just a little accent that's added to make this bag look high-end, and it is obviously after a designer bag. The bottom does not have feet. I usually do not put feet on my crossbody bags. However, you can certainly add that if you would like. So this is the bag we're making in today's video, the Willa. I hope you enjoyed the tutorial. So let's go over pattern pieces and let's get stitching. We're going to start out by going over the pattern pieces, and the first pattern piece is of course the front and the back. So I have 2 pieces here, and I want you to see that these are slightly angled at the top. Okay, so you can see that it comes down. The point where it is the lowest here is actually the front. So I want you to put a little mark here that says either T or F or something to indicate that it is the top front, because it's important that we know that, and we certainly do not want to put this together backwards. Okay, so again, the part that's the lowest is the front. So I marked it accordingly. We have a front and a back, or 2 main pieces. And on the back side, we have 2 pieces of stabilizer. Now I know I've got white on white. I'm going to try to, in the back of the faux is white, but I'm going to try to bring this up so you can see. There is a small space between the 2 stabilizer pieces. Okay, it's about 1/8 of an inch. So I have a piece of stabilizer basically going from here to here. It's a square piece, and then this top piece is angled down just like the top of the main body piece. Now, make sure when you cut these pieces out, you cut mirrored images. So you can't cut one with the pattern face up on your faux and the other one with the pattern face up on your faux, you're going to end up with two of the same pieces. You have to cut one with the pattern face up on your faux, flip your pattern piece over, put the other one face up on your or face down on your faux, and then cut. That will give you mirrored pieces. Same thing happens with this top piece of stabilizer. You need to cut them mirrored so that the angle is the same on both, or actually really the angle's opposite on both pieces, but the same as your main body piece, okay? So make sure that you pay attention when you cut. We have a bottom piece, and the bottom piece, as you can see, it's not square, it's not really round, it's kind of a rounded rectangle, okay? I do have some stabilizer on the back of that outside of my seam allowances. We then have a zipper overlay piece for the back. It's going to be for the back zipper pocket. We have two handle pieces, and this is a two-toned handle. So I have one piece in my accent color, and I have another piece in my main color. These are 2 inches wide, not 4, so make sure you pay attention to that. You're going to put a line, draw a line down, horizontal line down the center of each piece. And when you cut these out, make sure that you pay attention because your main piece is longer than your accent piece. Okay, so when I say longer, I mean the width. You know, when you put it out this way, your main piece is a little bit longer than your accent piece. We have two strap connector pieces. This is a hidden strap connector, and so I made it, you're not going to see much of it, but I went ahead and did it in my accent color. So two of those. Now you have two pieces here. You actually have, let me back up. You actually have three longer pieces, okay? One is a little bit, 1 inch shorter than the other two. The two that you have are slip pocket accents for the interior slip pockets. The one that you have that's a little bit shorter, as well as one that's a lot shorter, are your closure pieces. So this is going to be your top closure and your bottom closure pieces. And you also have a piece, it's basically a square, perfect square that you're going to cut out. And then you can see here, you're going to cut it on an angle so that you have two equal triangles. These are your strap keeper pieces. We're going to, of course, sew these all onto the main part of the bag. You have a back upper lining and you have a front upper lining. Now you can see the front upper lining is angled, okay? So you can see, just like the bag, how that front upper lining has a slight angle. We have stabilizer on the back, centered, okay, on both pieces. We, of course, have our key fob, if you would like a key fob. We have our zipper pocket pieces. So this is going to be for the back zipper pocket. We have two pieces, of course, and then we have some classic woven views, woven interfacing on the back of the pockets. We have a lining bottom. Again, we have woven interfacing on the back of all of these pieces. These are two slip pocket pieces. So these pieces are going to be for the interior slip pockets. They're large, okay? And you'll see why as we go through this bag when we make it. You'll see why they are large. But we have two of these. Of course, we have the woven fuse on the back. And then we have our main lining pieces. Now, let me caution you on these main lining pieces. Of course, we have two, but I'm not sure, you should be able to tell from this picture, this is slightly angled in. And that is so that it takes up some of the bagginess. Of course, we don't want a baggy lining. We want to make sure our lining fits nice and snug. So in order to make sure that I don't screw this up, when I go to sew all this together, I put a T at the top of each one of these so that I know what the top is. And you can see I did it when I cut it because I really wanted to make sure that I did not mess that up because it is slightly angled. So we have two lining pieces. Of course, we have woven interfacing on the back of each piece. So for hardware, we have got two swivel clasps. Two, you can either use D-rings or triangle rings, whichever. We've got triangle rings here, and these are gunmetal. Of course, you can use whatever color you have. We have a wide mouth slide adjuster. We have a 1/2 inch swivel clasp, and then you need some kind of closure. The inspiration bag used a wooden toggle button. We obviously have wooden toggle buttons that are nice and large. I have one here in the color black, but get creative. You can either make your own or you can use whatever kind of large button that you have on hand. Now, this bag does not have purse feet on it. I typically don't put purse feet on crossbody bags. However, if you would like purse feet, you can certainly add them, no problem at all. Okay, we're gonna move on to step one, which is the crossbody strap and the strap connectors. So I showed you earlier, I have a horizontal line drawn down the center of each strap piece and each strap connector piece. I put 1/2 inch double-sided tape right over that line, and I'm going to fold the long edges up to the center line. Now we want the edges to match in the center. That's not always the case when I do crossbody straps, but this one's a little bit different, and I want to make sure that it's nice and even and that the centers match. Okay, so there's the two. Crossbody will stitch that in the strap connectors will stitch that in just a minute. And I'm just going to repeat that process to fold the long edges of these crossbody straps to the center. Now, when you do this, make sure that you're not pulling on your strap. Don't pull this and push it down. All you want to do is take the side, put it up towards the line, and then push the rest of it down. To make sure that I don't pull, a lot of times I'll go further on the strap as you see here, and then I will push the rest down so that I know that is not going to be off. Twisted handles many times start at the table because we're not folding the piece correctly. And so in order to avoid twisting handles, I am going to make sure that I'm not pulling. Now, the other thing that I failed to mention in the beginning is that your main crossbody strap is not only longer, it is also a little bit wider. So again, make sure that you are looking at the instructions as you do this, follow the cutting chart for that, and then go ahead and fold your pieces to the center. Now that all of my strap connectors have been folded, I'm going to take some double-sided tape, 1/2 inch, and I'm going to put it over the accent piece right down the center. So basically right over the fold. So this is going on the wrong side of the piece, and it's going right over that fold that I just made. From here, we're going to take our main piece, we're going to peel the backing off the tape, and I want the main piece to overlap the accent piece by about 1 inch, okay? So we're going to center it on there, so that's going to enable you to see a little bit of the accent behind the main piece. It's going to give it a nice you know, nice frame, for lack of a better word. It's going to frame it out. And so we're just going to make sure we have about an inch. Doesn't have to be exact. But you want enough that you can fold this to the back. So I'm just going to do my best to center this in here. And then, of course, on the opposite side, since your main piece is longer, you're going to have a little bit extra there as well. Okay. So from here, we are going to go to the machine and we are going to top stitch the accent in place 1/8 of an inch from the top of the accent piece. Okay, down, of course, each long edge. We're also going to go ahead and stitch down each long edge of these strap connector pieces. We now have the strap completed as far as stitching, and you can see how having the accent piece slightly larger than the main piece just gives that strap a little bit of accent there on the side, frames it nicely. So we're going to finish up this crossbody strap now while we're working. So I'm going to take my wide mouth slide adjuster and 2 swivel clasps. And I'm going to put the wide mouth slide adjuster on one side of this strap. Now, you've got extra here. We want extra here because we want to fold this to the back and then go ahead and put it down. What that does is it eliminates that raw edge and it gives you a really nice finish. Now, right here, you can either put a rivet or you can stitch across, whichever you prefer. Rivets are not mandatory, they are optional. So whichever you prefer, go ahead and do. I'm going to put a rivet. I think rivets look really nice. And if you're, of course, into bag making, you either already have a rivet press or you're looking to buy one. I highly suggest, if this is something you're going to do regularly, to go ahead and get a rivet press. It makes life a lot easier. So I'm going to go ahead and place a rivet here and then we will finish up the strap. So I now have a rivet placed on there. I'm going to slide a slide adjuster on the opposite end. Go ahead and push it way down. And I'm going to take that opposite end, feed it back up through the slide adjuster and down the other side. Okay, so this is what we have, is a slide adjuster with a swivel clasp on one end. So I'm sure you've guessed it, we're going to go ahead and place the slide adjuster on this other end. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to fold this piece of faux leather back, and then we're going to put another rivet, or again, like I mentioned, you can stitch here to finish up that crossbody strap. So now that that rivet is set, I have my crossbody strap completed. So I'm going to just set this aside for the end, and then of course we have our strap connector stitched. So I'm also going to set these aside for a later step. So at this point we're going to move on to step 2, which is the exterior construction. And for this step, we are going to take our main body pieces. As I mentioned, of course, part of them in the beginning, we've got a dip here. We want to stitch the opposite ends together. So the dip is where the front is, and I'm going to stitch the back. So I'm going to put a few wonder clips in here to help me hold this, and then we are going to stitch this back seam. Once we're completed, we're going to open this up. We're also going to open up the seam, and we're going to top stitch on both sides of the seam. So that seam is stitched, and then again we'll open this up. I'm going to open up the seam so it's laying flat, and then I'm going to top stitch on both sides, catching that seam allowance underneath. so now we have that stitched. See here, our seam is opened up. And we are now going to be working with the back side. Okay, so we're going to have to put our zipper in here, and your top, and in case you didn't mark it, make sure your top is the part where you've got your little bit of spot for your stabilizer, okay, that little bit of space that has no stabilizer. That's going to be the part that folds over, and you see by not having any stabilizer there, that's going to fold over nicely, and that's what we want. So essentially we're putting our zipper below that. So I put some double-sided tape on the back of my zipper overlay. I'm going to peel the backing off that tape, and of course we're going to center this right here in the back. I give you a measurement in the pattern, so make sure that you center it. Let's see, let me make a mark here so I know what I'm doing. And then I'm going to center this zipper overlay right on that line. Now, of course, don't pull this, just kind of set it down and let it lay where it wants to. Just make sure it's nice and straight. And if you need to do a little bit of measuring here, you can certainly do that. Now, it is essential to have this zipper overlay because we're going to cut the center out. And if we don't have a zipper overlay here, our stitches are going to come apart. By doing the cross stitch here with this zipper overlay, we're going to do it essentially twice, it's going to hold this seam in place. So if you decide you wanted to do something different, whatever you do, don't leave the zipper overlay out. Okay, that's essential. That's a very basic and a needed piece in this pattern. So we're going to stitch around the outside of this zipper overlay. Now I know it looks kind of low, but again, remember, we are going to be folding this down. This is a bag that folds over the top. We still have some other things to put on here. So if you're doubting yourself there, just fold that down and you can see that it's actually not as far down as what you think. I am going to pull my threads up through the bottom because I want to tie this off. I don't want to have a back stitch on this part. So let me go ahead and pull these out so I can do that. Let's see. Now when I get to the curve, I'm actually just going to take one stitch at a time. I'm going to slowly move this bag around. I'm going to go ahead and make sure I pull this out instead of using my thread cutter so that I can tie a knot in the back. Okay, so I'm just going to pull on my bobbin threads, pull the main threads up, and then just tie a knot. Usually when I do this, I like to, once I cut my threads, is to put a little piece of double-sided tape over that to hold that knot so it doesn't come apart. You could certainly burn it too. I find sometimes when I burn it, I burn a little too much and I burn into the knot and then the knot comes out anyway. So I'm just going to put that right on top, okay? So you can see the nice stitch there. And then from the top, you can see how taking one stitch at a time goes around that curve nicely, and you have a really nice stitch there. Okay, so from here we're going to cut the center out. And it does not have to be neat in the back. All you really want to make sure of is that you can't see the main part of the bag from the front, okay? And of course, make sure you do not cut your overlay, your zipper overlay itself. Okay, so that's what you have from the back. You see, it's not especially pretty, you know, it's what it is. I'm gonna cut this back a little bit more. But from the front, it is just beautiful. It looks fantastic. So we're going to go ahead and construct our zipper pocket and then we will center that. So let's put this aside for just a minute. So you're going to take your zipper and you're going to put the wrong side of your zipper against the right side of your zipper pocket. So both of them are facing you. We're going to stitch and then we're going to open up this seam so your zipper tape is laying nice and flat and you're going to top stitch that zipper tape in place. So this is what we have. You see the wrong side of the zipper with the right side of the pocket and vice versa. So we're going to take our other pocket piece and we're going to repeat that process. So we're going to put the wrong side of the zipper against the right side of the pocket. I want to make sure that my pockets are also lined up, okay? So I don't want, obviously, to do it, you know, like this. I want to make sure that the pocket pieces themselves are lined up. But you're going to line, again, the other side of the zipper tape, wrong side of the zipper with the right side of the pocket, and we're going to repeat. When that's completed, you're going to see the right side of the zipper with the wrong side of the pocket pieces and vice versa. So, go ahead and put your zipper pull on. once that's on, we're going to put some double-sided tape right along the edge of the zipper tape. Okay, so right along the edge. Okay, peel the backing from the tape, and now we're going to grab our main body piece and we're going to center this zipper in the opening. Now, depending on, which way you like your zipper pulled to close, make sure you pay attention to what direction that is going in. Also, make sure you orient your piece so that the top of the piece is in the same direction. Like I want my zipper to close to the left, so I'm going to make sure that when I put this piece on, the main piece, that I'm not putting this on upside down, okay? So we really want to pay attention to what we're doing here. We're going to go ahead and center that in there. And when I cut my zipper overlay, I think my zipper overlay ended up being a little bit narrower than it should have been. So when you do yours, you might find yours is a little bit fatter, and that's okay, it should be. Make sure you center it. And then once I'm happy with it, I'm going to stitch around the inside rectangle. I'm going to make sure that I tie my threads off, so I'm going to make sure that I pull this out again. So if you're using your thread cutter, go ahead and pull the bobbin thread up, and then we will stitch. Make sure I'm nice and centered. We're going to do another little bit stitch here. Okay, here we go. My needle's getting a little bit sticky, so I'm just going to go ahead and put a little bit, wipe it off with some alcohol here. A lot of times if you're getting skipped stitches and you're not sure why, it might be because of double-sided tape. So just kind of keep that in mind. Keep some alcohol pads or something similar close so you can wipe that off. And of course I want to make sure my stitches align coming in the other direction. And then I'm going to pull the threads through. I'm not going to cut. And I'm going to tie them off in the back. So I'm just going to pull those bobbin threads up through and tie this off. Now, obviously I don't want to put double-sided tape on the inside of my pocket. So this is a spot where I'm going to burn the edges or singe the edges, but I'm going to try to be very careful with that so I don't burn the knot as well. Okay, so from here we're going to take the pocket. We're going to take the upper part of the pocket and fold it down towards the lower part of the pocket. Now again, I still have my orientation here where I have my T for top at the top. I don't want to mess that up. Don't want to fold the pocket in the wrong direction. I'm going to put a couple of wonder clips, and then whenever you do a pocket this way, you're always going to have about an inch to an inch and a quarter left at the bottom. One pocket ends up being larger than the other by the width of the zipper tape. So I'm just going to cut that off. And then we are going to stitch. Now, I'm not going to leave this open. I'm going to stitch all the way around. This is actually a drop-in lining. You could certainly leave this open if you wanted to, but the problem is that we don't have a nice box bottom. We have that kind of rectangle, curved rectangle bottom. And that really makes it hard to leave the pocket open, pull it through, and try to finish off the seam, because where are you going to leave open? It's not as easy as just leaving the entire bottom open and pulling it through. So just kind of keep that in mind. It's not impossible to do, but it certainly is going to be easier to do that drop-in lining in this case. So I'm going to, again, stitch all the way around and close this pocket. When you do this, make sure you turn your piece over. You're going to pull the side over and you're going to stitch this way. Don't try to stitch like this on your machine. You're just not going to have enough space, okay? So make sure your piece is right side up. Just pull it aside and just stitch from this side all the way around. So we have our pocket fully closed. And then, of course, from the front, we have a nice pocket. So from here, we are going to go ahead and install our strap connectors next. Now you're gonna have to do a little bit of measuring, and it's not difficult, but what you wanna make sure of is that where you stitched the inside edge right here, that's where you're going to line up your ruler, okay? So that's going to be the inside point of your strap connector, and then it's going to come out an inch because these are 1-inch strap connectors, okay? So make sure when you line your ruler up, you lined it up right on that line. You're going to put a dot, and then you're going to come over an inch in that direction. And this is where we're going to put them. Oops, it'd be nice if my pen wrote. Hold on a minute. Okay, and we're going to do the same thing over here. We're going to line up with the inside stitch. and then we're going to draw that line. Okay, so from here, these are where our strap connectors are going. Okay, so you can see they're within the zipper overlay, but yet they extend beyond the zipper overlay. So I'm going to get myself a cutting mat, and I'm going to use a craft knife. So I'm just going to lay this down. Again, make sure you're on the correct side of the zipper. So this is our top. This is where the interfacing or the stabilizer has got a little space. Okay, you're working with the top. I'll take my ruler, and I'm just going to line this up and so I now have 2 slits. So I'm just going to remove my silver marking pen mark. And I'm going to take one of my strap connectors, I'm going to put it in the slit, and I want the right side of the strap connector. So the part of the strap connector that does not have the seam, okay, there's the seam. So the right part of the strap connector against the right side of the bag. And I want the strap connector to be oriented so that it is facing the top of the bag. Okay, so here's the top. Again, here's the top, working great. I'm going to pull that through, and the strap connector is going to be pointing towards the top. So I'm going to do the same thing over here. Okay. And on the back, you will see that the strap connectors are about 1 inch. Okay, they're about 1 inch on the back side. This doesn't have to be exact, okay, but you don't want them, you know, way far down, but at the same time, you don't want to leave just a tiny little spot. You want to give yourself a little bit of room. So from here, we're going to stitch on the strap connector, not on the bag itself, okay? So go onto the strap connector, and you're going to stitch between your 2 between your 2 top stitch lines. Now, we want to make sure that when you do that, if you stitch on the bag, what's going to happen is you're not going to be able to get the other part of your strap connector in. So this needs to be on the strap connector itself. Don't overstitch onto your bag because you're going to see that. So just make sure that you're stitching on the strap connector right above the slit, you know, give yourself about 1/8 of an inch, and we're going to do that on both strap connectors. So now that those are sewn in, you can see they're good and tight. I'm going to take my D-ring, triangle ring, rectangle ring, whatever you're using, you're going to put it onto the strap connector, and you're going to take the raw edge, basically the edge you can see of your strap connector, and you're going to feed it back down through the hole. And this is why if you stitched on your bag, you're not going to be able to stick this through. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that through, and I want to pull this nice and tight. And we're going to do the same thing here. So I'm just going to reach in here. And pull that nice and tight. Okay, now from here, we are going to stitch on our bag, and we're going to stitch right across the bottom, right below the slit. And what that's going to do is it's going to grab obviously the front part of the bag and both pieces of the strap connector underneath. Now, if so inclined, if you would like, you can use rivets here as well. I think it's going to look really nice. I'm going to do that. If you don't want to do that or you don't have rivets, no problem. Do 2 lines of stitching. Okay, so you do you, whatever you prefer, whatever you have, and we'll go ahead and stitch these in place. So these are now stitched in place, and if you do want to put a rivet, you're going to put it about a 1/2 inch below the slit. Okay, so you see I've marked that. I'm going to go ahead and put rivets and then we'll return. I have my rivets installed, everything's looking good. I'm going to set this aside for just a minute and we're going to work on our closure pieces. So make sure you grab your closure piece that is 15 inches, okay? Your upper lining pieces are 16 inches, your closure piece is 15. You don't want to grab the wrong one. And of course we have our lower closure here, which is a lot smaller. I'm going to put 1/8 of an inch double-sided tape on each side, each long side, that is. We're going to fold this in thirds. Now if you want to mark, you can certainly do that. I'm not going to worry about it. This is such a small piece. I think it's going to be pretty easy to fold in thirds. So I'm going to remove the backing from the tape. And I'm going to fold this up about 2/3 of the way. Again, try not to pull on your piece. You just want to fold it up and stick it down. And then you're going to remove the double-sided tape from the other side and fold this right over that edge. So you're going to make sure that the edge of this, the raw edge here, meets the folded edge over here. So we're just going to fold this all the way over. Now I've tried doing this with Wonder Clips before, and you can do it, but it is so much easier with double-sided tape because this is such a small, meaning narrow piece. It's hard to have the Wonder Clips hold it all in place as you're trying to stitch. Okay. So that's one. We're going to repeat that same thing with this one. The longer one is going to go in the back, and the shorter one is going to go in the front, the bottom of the front. Okay, so from here, just go ahead and stitch from the right side, stitch down the center of each one of these pieces. And this is probably going to be a place where you want to make sure that you have your alcohol swab handy if you're not using an industrial machine, because you will most likely need it. so we now have our 2 closure pieces. So set the shorter one aside for just a minute. We're not going to use that one quite yet. Take your longer piece and your main part of your bag. The first thing we want to do is put our wooden toggle button on. Now, again, if you don't have a wooden toggle button, we certainly sell them on our website. You could go to simplyclassic.net and find what you need. We have them in 3 colors, light brown, dark brown, and black. Or you can use a button. You can use, you know, some other kind of closure for sure. You can certainly even make your own button. You could, you know, take a piece of faux leather and roll it up and stitch it and make your own. And that's really a great option if you have a color that's, you know, a little unique. And this works good because I needed black, but, you know, if you're using a different color faux, you might not be able to find a button that matches. So I'm just going to kind of center this and on the other side. And sometimes these are a little rough to get through because they are wooden and it kind of grabs, the fibers of the wood grab the faux. So if you need to use an awl or something similar to pull it through, you can certainly do that. Okay. Again, I'm going to make sure that they are even. I'm pretty close to it. And we are going to stitch this on the bag. Now, we want it centered for sure. I'm going to take a little piece of double-sided tape and put it over these ends right here to kind of hold them together. Make sure I get my ruler. And we're going to center this. And I give you a measurement from the top of the zipper overlay. So from here, I'm going to do 2 stitches. I'm going to just do one at the very end and one about a 1/2 inch up to stitch this in place. So now that that is stitched in place, we are going to take one of our strap keeper pieces. And I like to use 1/8 of an inch double-sided tape here because I want to put more than one layer. So I'm going to put a layer on the top edge and then center and then closer to the bottom edge. I want to make sure it's not showing from the front. We're going to peel the backing off this tape and we're going to place it right over this edge. Now, these raw edges. Now make sure your triangle is pointing down and make sure that the point of your triangle is right on your seam. So go ahead and peel the backing off. And I'm just going to make sure that the ends are, you know, roughly centered on this triangle. Now, one of my testers suggested putting a little piece of stabilizer on the back of this keeper. You can certainly do that. I think it's a great idea, especially if you want to make sure it doesn't stretch, if you've got stretchy fabric. Also, if you want to kind of hide the ends some. I'm black, I think I'll be okay. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my silver marking pen and about 1/8 of an inch away from each point, I'm going to go ahead and make a dot. And what this is going to do is help me know exactly where I need to turn when I stitch this triangle on. Without those dots, I might not know exactly where to turn, and I may not, my stitch might be off. Okay, so little dots like that, something so simple and easy, make a huge difference in the end result of your bag. Now I'm going to make sure once I make my dots, I'm true to them. And I want to stop and start and turn in each, at each dot. I also, of course, want to have nice long threads so I can tie this off in the back. So I'm going to make sure I start right on one of those dots. And I'm going to make sure that I hit the dot exactly, my needle hits the dot exactly right. And then I'm going to turn. I'm going to come down. Now, you may want to use an awl or something to help you hold the point of that triangle in place as you're stitching down. You know how sometimes our machines like to push fabric, even if you have your press-a-foot tension low, sometimes it just happens. So I'm just going to take my awl, I'm going to put it right here in the point of this triangle and make sure that point stays right on that seam. I'm also going to make sure that I stop right on top of that dot. And then one more time, we're going to turn and stitch in the other direction. Again, making sure that we end in the same hole we started, which is on that beginning dot. Go ahead and pull your threads through and we're going to tie them off. And then just like before, I'm going to put a little piece of double-sided tape over my knot to make sure that it does not come out. Okay, and you can see, think from the back here, that all of our stitching, all of our handles, all of our pockets is below this stabilizer line. Okay, again, this is the top. You see my T, and everything's done below that. So from the back, this is what we have. Again, we can go ahead and just take our little silver marking pens off. And actually, you can see this more than I thought you could. How about that? So another thing, if you don't want to use Decovil light, you can use a piece of foam there, and that will help cover it as well. And I might do that on the front because I'm actually surprised at how much you can see that. Okay, good enough. Looks good. So from here, we are going to finish up this exterior. So let me zoom you out. We're going to take these other two edges. We're going to match them. So this is now the front. Put some Wonder Clips and we're going to stitch this in place. And then we're going to open up that seam and top stitch. Now, this is going to be top stitching in the tunnel. What that means is that you are going to have to keep the bag wrong side out. And when you top stitch, you're going to start up here at the top. You're going to stitch down as far as you can. Go ahead and cut your threads, leave them long, and then you can come from the bottom, pick up where you left off, and then finish out that seam, okay? So we have a little bit of stitching in the tunnel here. This is a big enough bag. It's definitely doable. It's not that hard. You just need to take your time with it. So I'm going to stitch, and then I will stitch in the tunnel to do my top stitching. Now, stitching in the tunnel is always hard to see. I'm going to just open up this top stitch, and again, I'm going to start here. I'm going to stitch down as far as I can. I'm going to make sure that when I can't stitch anymore, I stop, I cut my threads long, and then I'll come up from the bottom part of the bag and pick up where I left off and keep stitching. So you see how this bag's wanting to bunch up a little bit. I'll zoom out so you can maybe see a little better what I'm doing. I'm just making sure that seam allowance is open. And I'm just about to a point where I'm feeling this is as far as I can go. So I'm going to go ahead and pull my bag out, cut my threads really long. I'm gonna do the other side while I'm working from the top, and then we'll pick up where we left off at the bottom. So I just keep working with the bag. And right about there is where I'm going to stop. I can see that's where the stitching on the other side stopped as well. So I'm just going to pull my threads. I am going to go ahead and tie these off now. So pull that bobbin thread through. And you can see I've left these threads a little bit long. I'm going to pick up where I left off, keep stitching down, stitch the rest of this down, tie the threads off at this point, and then I can go ahead and kind of clean this up. Sometimes when you don't tie them off right away, I kind of lose one of my threads, and I have to go back and do a little bit of hand stitching, and it's just no fun. So I've learned to go ahead and tie these off before I continue. So now that I'm ready to continue, I'm going to take the bag, pull it in from the back, pick up where I left off, and then stitch down. So I'm just going to keep pulling until I see. Now, I have an 1/8 of an inch foot on my machine, and that 1/8 of an inch foot is a wonderful thing, except for it has a closed front toe. And sometimes it's hard for me to see exactly where my stitches, where I left off, especially when I'm using a darker color like I am today. So I'm just going to take my time here and make sure that I am exactly where I want to be, because this is the front. Okay, I'm going to put this down and I'm going to stitch. We're going to repeat for this other side, and then we'll tie those threads off in the back. All right, now I'm going to tie these off, and then I'll put a piece of double-sided tape over all of the knots, all 4 of them. Hold it all in place. Go ahead and put some double-sided tape over them, and then you can always cut the extra thread. Now from here, we need to put our bottom strap piece on. So I'm going to turn this so that I can work with the front. I don't want to turn the bag yet, but I do need to put my bottom strap keeper on. So just like before, I'm going to put a little piece of double-sided tape. Now there's no clasp or anything to put on this. So I'm just going to take the ends, fold this in half, put a little piece of double-sided tape on those ends. Let me do it this way. So I'm going to take my ruler, and from the bottom edge now, okay, bottom front edge, and really the front, you know you're at the front because the front has nothing on it, it's just a seam. So I'm just going to measure. Again, I give you this measurement in the pattern. I'm going to measure up. I'm going to make sure I'm centered, and using a silver marking pen, I'm just going to put a little mark. And you're working in the tunnel here, but it's definitely doable. Mark that one more time. My pen is not one to mark very well. Okay, so from here, let me see if I can get this. Okay, I've got a mark here, and I think you can see that. There's my mark. So I'm going to take the backing off the double-sided tape. I'm going to put the raw ends right against that mark. So the top of the bag is going up this way. So I'm going to make sure that the loop is going towards the top of the bag. Okay, the loop's going towards the top of the bag. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to do a couple of stitches to hold that in place. Move this over and do one more set of stitches. So that is now stitched in place. You can see there, we got some stitches there. Okay, so we need to put our keeper on now. And believe it or not, putting this keeper on is not as difficult as you might think. You are going to be stitching, with this inside out, but because it's a triangle, it's really not bad. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go ahead and put my double-sided tape on here. Peel the backing off. I'm going to make sure the triangle's pointing down. Oh, I've got a thread, a rogue thread. Let me cut that. And I'm just going to place this right over those edges so it looks just like that. Okay. Now I want to put my dots just like I did the first time. It helped me know exactly where to turn. So I'm just going to dot, dot, dot. Okay, and now I'm going to stitch that in place. Make sure my threads are nice and long. Go ahead and slide in. I'm going to start on that first dot. Make sure I end exactly on the second dot. Turn around, come up to this other side. And then we're going to turn one more time and come across. I'm going to make sure I pull my threads long. I'm going to tie it off just like we did the last one. And then again, put a little bit of double-sided tape to hold that knot in place. Okay, so we are now just about through with the exterior. The last thing we need to do is to go ahead and put our bottom on. So I want to go ahead and fold this in half, line my seams. Actually do it this way, line my seams, and go ahead and mark the center of the other two sides. I'm going to do the same thing on the bottom piece. I want to find the center of the long sides. And I want to find the center of the short sides. Now, when you put this bottom piece on, you need to remember that your front and your back is where the seams are, not opposite. You know, I think a lot of times we're thinking of the stitched seams as the side seams, but the reality is the stitched seams are the front and the back. So go ahead and align one of the long edges with one of the seams, doesn't matter, front or back. I'm going to wonder clip and do the same thing on the other side. And then we're also going to align the notch with the notch on our shorter side of our bottom. Now we have curves here, and what we need to do in order to fit this in is you always want to cut the straight edge. This is the curved edge, this is the straight edge. So we are just going to put little snips in the bag. Just little ones. Don't make them too big. Don't go all the way up to the stabilizer. You want to go about halfway. And then what that's going to do is it's going to allow us to fit this edge together. So you see what happens when you snip. Those little snips open up. You can kind of see the black underneath. And they spread and they allow this bag to fit in. So they allow all of this to fit together. You do the same thing over here. First, go ahead and match your centers. And then make your snips. You can match up these curved edges. Now, couple hints. If you would like, you could staple this in place before you stitch it in. That's up to you. If you do, make sure you staple far enough along the edge so that when you take your staples out, you're not going to see holes when you turn your bag. The other thing you could do, which is probably what I'm going to do, is to stitch about 1/8 of an inch away from the edge first, and then go back and do your 1/4 of an inch stitching, your final stitching. The 1/8 of an inch is going to just help hold it all in place so that you can go back and do your normal stitching without all the wonder clips in the way. Use an awl or a pair of hemostats or something similar as you go around these curves to help hold the curves in place. And then when you stitch, you want to stitch with the bag up like this, okay, against the bed of your machine. And you're just going to take the bag, push it down, and then stitch around. That's going to allow the curved edges to split and splay open. You can see here, you know how these are opening up. You want that to happen so that you can go right around that curve. So again, I'm going to start out with about 1/8 of an inch just to help me hold everything in place, and then we will increase that to 1/4. So these hemostats really do come in handy, and you can find these rainbow hemostats on our website if that's something you're interested in. It really does help with curves. I love them. Okay, so that finished up my 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. And I'm going to go ahead and go right into my 1/4 inch, which is what the seam allowance is to stitch this bottom on. So I'll just cut these threads. Move over just a tad and then go ahead and stitch. And now I have no wonder clips to worry or contend with, and the bottom should go on easily. So I have both rows of stitching completed. You can see here, did first the 1/8 and the 1/4. And you can go ahead and trim this back. You don't want to trim it back too much. I really want the edges, like these curves more than anything, to be cut back. Okay, these curves here. So let me just do a little bit of snipping here. I'll go ahead and do it all. And I'm not cutting off a whole heck of a lot, but just enough so that it takes some of the bulk out. All right. So that should do it. I'm going to, at this point, go ahead and turn, well, before I turn the exterior of the bag, I am going to do one other thing. This, again, as I mentioned, this is a drop-in lining. And so what that means is that we are going to drop the lining into the bag and top stitch it closed. You can wait to do this. I actually think it's a little easier to put the double-sided tape on the top edge before you turn it. So this is a 1/4 inch double-sided tape. When we put this together, essentially we're going to have a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So hopefully this will keep out of my stitch path. Of course, your front does dip down a little bit. We know that from the way the pattern pieces were cut. So I'm just going to kind of keep coming around. And then snip this off. You can turn it now or you can wait, either way. Make it a little easier on myself and turn it now. Just going to peel that backing off. I'm just going to use the edge of the stabilizer as my guide. So I'm going to pull this top down as far as I can and let it fold over the edge of the stabilizer. Now, of course, our front has that dip. So you're going to see the front go down some. That's okay. That's what we want. Okay, and once that is done, we can turn it. So there's our bottom. There's our back. Of course, top, front, this will fold over and we will clip it this way. So it's going to give you a pretty good indication of what the bag is going to look like. Now, if you're using, especially solid, a lot of times it gets pretty wrinkly. So if you need to, now is the time to get in there with a small iron and iron the bag. So what I'll do is just take and open this up. You can see I have some wrinkles. I'll stick my iron in there. I'll just go ahead and iron all in here from the inside to make sure that I get any wrinkles out. Good thing about using a print, a lot of times is you can't see those wrinkles. You know, this is really, really pretty. So this is our new zebra. We have it in black and white, and then we also have it in this brown and black. I'm using our black textured for the accents. And then I'm going to be using, if you haven't noticed already, the brown tilde for the lining is what we're using. Okay, I think it's a really nice contrast. Okay, so that is the exterior of the bag. We are going to set it aside and we're going to move on. We're going to move on to step 3, which is the lining construction. And step 1 of the lining construction is going to be to work on the slip pockets. So we are going to take the 2 longer edges of the slip pocket and we are going to put them right sides together. So this pocket is really long because we're going to make gussets in it. Okay, we're going to make lines, and that way all of our companion pieces or whatever else you might want to store in there will fit wonderfully. So I'm going to put a couple of wonder clips along the side edges, and I'm just going to go ahead and stitch these side edges. Okay, from here, go ahead and fold the seam allowance over itself. Hold that seam allowance down and just push that corner out, and you'll get a nice clean corner without having to cut anything. So same thing here. Okay, from here, go ahead and we're going to stitch the top closed. When you do that, you want to use about 1/8 of an inch, just a scant 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Now that that is done, we're going to take our slip pocket accent. I'm going to put double-sided tape along both long edges. I'm going to remove the backing from one of the tape pieces, and we're going to center the pocket on the upper lining. Okay, so just go ahead and that piece on there. Remove the backing from the other side of double-sided tape, and we're going to fold that right over to create a nice looking pocket. So from here, I am going to top stitch this in place using an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. You can now go ahead and cut off any little extra edges that you have. Even it up. And we have ourselves a good looking slip pocket. So we're going to need to draw some lines. So get a fabric pen, something that erases. And the first thing we want to do is draw a line down the center. So we're going to be drawing vertical lines. I'm going to go ahead and just fold this in half so I know where the center is. And then draw a line down the center. Okay, from that center line, I'm going to go to the right, and I'm going to go to the left by 1.5 inches and draw another line. So I have a 3-inch ruler here, so I'm just going to go ahead and draw a line on each side. So now we have 3 lines. So now we're going to draw a line 1.5 inches from each short edge. Okay, easy enough. Okay, using some Wonder Clips, we're going to fold this pocket. We don't want to fold on our center line. That's just going to stay the way it is. So I'm going to fold on one of the lines to the right of the center line and to the left of the center line. I'm just going to put a couple Wonder Clips in place. Hold this. And then I'm also, you notice I'm folding so that my back side is together. I don't want to call it the wrong side because this looks pretty, but the back side's together. We're going to do the same thing on these lines closest to the side. And then we're going to stitch 1/8 of an inch from the edge. Okay, so from each one of these edges, I'm going to fold this like this, stitch 1/8 of an inch, 1/8 of an inch, 1/8 of an inch, and then 1/8 of an inch. So here's our pocket with all of our pleats in it. So you're going to take one of your lining pieces. Now, make sure that your lining piece is oriented correctly. So if you remember in the beginning, we put a little T at the top of our lining piece, which this is the top for me. And then we're going to position the pocket on this piece. Now, I'll give you measurements in the pattern as far as how far from the top or from the bottom. You can measure either one. And of course, we're going to center this. So let me find the center of my pocket first. So I'm going to measure from the bottom. Okay. So, and we're going to line the center line that we drew on the pocket up with the center of our piece. Now you can either use pins here or you can use magnets. I like my Sew Tight magnets, so I'm just going to go ahead and put these on this piece. So that it holds it in place. And what we're going to do is stitch on the center line to hold this pocket in place, okay? So I want to make sure I'm straight. Looks like I'm off a little bit. Let me fix it. Okay. And I'm going to start here and stitch all the way down the center line. So now that that's stitched, I will remove my magnets. And now what I want to do is stitch these sides down. Now, again, I give you a measurement in the pattern as to how far from the side you need to place the pocket. Now remember, this side is angled, okay? It's not perfectly straight up and down. So when you put your ruler, don't angle your ruler. You want your angle to be, or your ruler to be straight up and down. So you might want to line it on your top edge. And then go ahead and place your pocket. Now, in addition there, I also want to make sure that I am the same distance from the bottom so that my pocket is not crooked. And we are now going to stitch the side. So I'm going to put a sew tight magnet here. And then I'm going to do the same thing here on this side. Start out by lining it up with the top. Make sure my bottom is about right. And then add my magnet. Okay, so from here, I'm just going to stitch down each side to hold the sides in place. So the final step is going to be to stitch the bottom. So I'm going to just go ahead and kind of center. You can see these pockets have got a lot of space here. I'm going to center them and push the pleats, the actual stitch or the seam we stitched, you know, of course to the right here and to the left here. And you can put a magnet at the bottom if you'd like to kind of hold that in place. I'm going to do the same thing here. And you can certainly measure this if you'd like. I usually just kind of eyeball. And then as I stitch, I'm just going to back stitch over this seam. As I come here to the center, I'm going to back stitch here and here, and then I'm going to back stitch here. It's going to help hold this bottom seam in place. And once you remove your magnets, you will now have gusseted pockets. Now I can see here, I accidentally did not measure in the correct amount from the sides. When I did this, your pocket should be a little more gusseted than this. So you're going to repeat this process with the other pocket. Make sure you check the pattern for the exact measurement from the side. I obviously measured wrong, but that's okay. These will work. I'm just going to make sure I do it right when I do the second pocket. So repeat those steps and stitch your second pocket onto your other lining piece. So both of my pockets completed, and you can see from the distance to the center line that these pockets have more room, basically more of a gusset, okay, than these pockets. So you can use that in any way you like. And what I mean by that is if you want your pockets to have a little bit more gusset or more space, you can certainly move the side edge in, and that's going to give you more room. If you want less, you move the side edge out and it gives you less room. Okay, easy enough. So we are going to put these pieces aside for just a minute because we cannot forget our key fob. That thing that I tend to forget all the time. We're going to make sure we don't forget it. So I'm going to put double-sided tape on the back side down one long edge. And we're going to fold this in half, the long edges together. And we do have a cut allowance here, so just match it up as best you can. We'll trim it back. And then we're going to stitch using a 1/4 inch seam allowance from the raw edge. I'm going to take this to my cutting table and I'm going to cut off 1/8 of an inch, so I have 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Then we will put our swivel clasp on. So I have that cut back. I'm just going to go ahead and slide my swivel clasp on, and you can either stitch or rivet. If you don't have rivets, you know, stitching's not a problem. And just for fun this time, I'm going to go ahead and stitch that. Probably do 2 lines of stitching, one at the very edge and one about 1/8 of an inch away. And now we have our key fob completed. So we are going to stitch our upper linings to our lining pieces. Now at this point, you know, unless you have a pocket that you absolutely want in the front of your bag, there's really no front and back to this. So just take one of the pieces. So this here is my back because it's the perfectly rectangle piece. I'm going to put a couple wonder clips on that. And then my front piece, of course, dips down a little bit. So I'm just going to make sure that I put the straight edge against the top of the lining. Put a couple wonder clips. Now, typically I like to put my key fob in between my upper lining and my lower lining. However, since this bag folds over, that means the key fob is going to be constantly folded over. I don't want that. So instead, I'm going to stitch my key fob in the side seam closer to maybe just above my pocket. And that way the key fob is not constantly getting folded over inside the bag. So I'm going to stitch these upper linings first, and then I will turn and make sure the seam allowance is going towards the upper lining, and then top stitch on the upper lining, catching that seam allowance underneath. Both upper linings are stitched on. So we're going to put these pieces right sides together and wonder clip the side edges. Now, we of course want our upper lining to match as perfectly as possible. So I'm going to start right here. I'm going to make sure that these two upper lining pieces match exactly the seam and put a wonder clip there first. Same thing on this side. And then I will go ahead and clip the rest of the side. Now, you've got some bulk in here because you have these gusseted pockets. So you may have to just kind of make sure that these are lined up. Might have to tug and pull a little bit, but they should line up perfectly. So when I go to clip my second side, I might have to maneuver a little bit. Okay. And then before I start stitching, I'm going to make sure I take my key fob and slide it in right above my pockets on one side or the other. It doesn't matter which side. Just go ahead and wonder clip that in. Okay, we're now going to stitch the side seams. Make sure that you line up your upper linings perfectly. So I'm going to start here where the upper lining seam is, top stitch or back stitch to the top, and then come down. And I'm going to turn this over and I'm going to do the same thing, starting from the top each time. This is now stitched. So I've got obviously some extra key fob here. I'm going to just clip that off. And instead of cutting back the seam allowances on the side, what I'm going to do is open up this upper seam. So of course, we tried to make sure we matched these up perfectly, which looks pretty good. I'm going to open up the seam in the back and I'm going to stitch right on top of my top stitch lines right here. Just stitch maybe 2 or 3 in each direction to hold it closed here. Then I'm going to come to the top and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to stitch just to hold it closed. So I'm going to have 2 lines of stitching, one up here and one here. This one's going to be in the seam allowance. You're not going to see it. This one's going to blend in with the top stitch lines here. You're not going to see it. And then I'm going to go to the iron and I'm going to open this up and press it. Now the reason why I'm doing the little stitching here is because, again, this is a drop-in lining. This is going to drop inside of the bag and we're going to top stitch it closed. We're going to have to put double-sided tape around here just like we did on the main part of the bag and fold it over. I don't want to have any issues with these stitches or these seams not lining up or causing, problems with them. Because you can see whenever you take that, like if I take this and I fold this over, you see how those little triangles come out right there? I don't want that. I want this to be nice and flat, and I don't want any problems. So I'm going to go ahead and do my 2 little lines of stitching, and then I will go ahead and just iron the seam open, and then we'll put the bottom on. So here's a close-up of what this looks like. You can see this line just blends in, no problem. That's going to be in the seam allowance. You're not going to be able to tell, and you can see that holds it open. All right, so I've got everything ironed out. Looks great. We're almost there. So I'm going to do the same thing I did with the main part of the bag. I'm going to put the seams together and mark the bottom. Now, my bottoms are already marked because I put my pockets on, okay? So I had to mark the center. So I already have notches there. So I'm good to go. I'm going to take my bottom lining piece and I'm going to do the same thing. Go ahead and find the center of the long sides and the center of the short sides. And we're going to stitch this lining in the same way, except this time the seams are the sides. So if you remember when we put the bottom on the front or on the main part of the bag, the front and the back had the seams. This time it's on the sides. So this is really a great bag to make with a domestic machine because you have no interlocking or overlapping seams. It's really a great design. So I'm going to wonder clip this in place. Now, a lot of times the lining bottom it can be a little more challenging than the main part of the bag bottom when you have a circle or when you have something, you know, like this that's not perfectly rectangle or square. And the reason why is because the lining just doesn't have the same stability as the main part of the bag. Okay, it doesn't have, it's a little flimsier, and you know, a lot of times flimsy means a little harder to deal with. So just take your time when doing this. If you have a tuck here or there on the sides, you know, around the corners, don't worry about it. Nobody's going to know. Once you put all your stuff in it, nobody is going to look in your bag and pull out your lining to see if you have any tucks. So don't let that discourage you if that happens. Just part of the process. And the more you do these curved bottoms, the better you'll get. Okay, so just like with the main part of the bag, we need to clip or snip, let's just say, snip the straight edge, which again in this case is the bottom part of the bag. And then I will make sure that aligns. And the same thing is going to happen. Those little snips will open up. Okay. So now, just like when I put the bottom on, I'm going to make sure this is standing straight up. I'm going to go all the way around. You can do the same thing. If you want to do 1/8 of an inch, then 1/4 of an inch, that's not a problem. You can staple, you know, all the things I told you before apply to the lining as well. The thing about the lining is that if you put a staple a little too far in, if you take it out, obviously you're not going to see holes because we're dealing with cotton here. So that's a nice thing when dealing with the lining. So let's go ahead and stitch this on. With the bottom sewn in, I am going to cut back these seam allowance to about 1/8 of an inch. I was able to just do one pass. I didn't have to do the two. One, because I wasn't as concerned if I got a little tuck. It's not the end of the world. I did not get any tucks, but it's just one less row of stitching. So I'm just gonna trim. Okay. So we have our lining completed. See in there how great it looks. So I'm going to do the same thing here as I did with the main part of the bag. I'm going to put some double-sided tape along this top edge. And this is 1/4 of an inch. Now, of course, I have my little dip here in the front, so I'm just going to make sure I account for that when I put the double-sided tape on. If you need to put a little snip here, you can. It's not that much of a dip. It's just enough so that when we fold the top of that bag over, the front is not dipping below the bottom, or the back, rather. Okay, we're going to peel the backing off the tape and fold this over using the stabilizer as a guide, just like we did the main part of our bag. And you can definitely feel it. course, on the front we have our little dip. All right, there we go. So from here we are going to put all of this together. Of course, you definitely want to put the front of your bag with the front of your bag. So here is my little dip on this side. My little dip is here on this side. If you want to use double-sided tape instead of clips to hold all this together, you can. What I would suggest is you put the double-sided tape below where you're going to stitch. So we know we're going to stitch 1/8 of an inch to stitch all of this together. So maybe put the double-sided tape, you know, maybe right here along your raw edge. So I'm going to do that just so you can kind of see. Usually I just clip it, but let's put this on. So again, you know, I know that I'm going to have to stitch 1/8 of an inch. I don't want to put it all the way to the edge. Also, my 1/4 inch, of course, is going to about that height too. So as long as I stay 1/8 of an inch away from the edge, I should not be stitching over 3 layers of double-sided tape. So I'm just going to run this all the way around. And I believe that in the pattern, this is just a hint. You don't have to, certainly not have to do this. This is just another little trick that I use sometimes to help hold everything in place. Because obviously this stitch, this is it. This is the final stitch. We want it to look really good. All right, so before I peel the backing off, I'm going to stick this in. And I'm just going to do a little test, make sure everything kind of matches up, okay? Make sure I don't need to take any seams in. Now, I would recommend that you go ahead and mark your sides. So I'm going to match my front and my back where my seams are, and just put a little bit of a mark where my side is. Okay, mark that. And then I'm going to do the same thing on my lining. I'm going to match the seams. I'm going to put a little bit of a mark where the front and back is. And then that way I know, let me put it on this side. Exactly where to match. Because a lot of times when you're doing drop-in linings, you do have to ease it in some. Okay, so I have all my marks. So again, before I peel off my tape, let me just make sure that this is going to fit okay. So I've got mark to mark. Got that. And then on the side, make sure that lines up. And then on this side, let's make sure that lines up. Okay, so you can see when I pull this straight, you know, when you have it in like this, it's going to look like it doesn't fit, right? It looks like I've got a lot of extra in a lot of places, but don't worry if you see that. What you want to do is straighten the part in between. So if I straighten this, I can see that these two, this will match up, okay? If I do that here, oh, my wonder clips are breaking. I can see that's going to match up. Here, matches up. Here, I'm off a little, okay? I am off. So what I'm gonna do, before I start taking things apart, I'm gonna cheat it a little bit. So I'm just gonna move this just over slightly and try to ease that in evenly on each one of these sides. Okay, so if I do that, I should be able to ease that in. And if I do that, I should be able to ease that in. Okay, so I think I'm good to go. So from here, I will go ahead and peel the backing off the tape. Let me see where my tape starts. Okay, it starts right here. So I'm going to match that up. I'm going to go ahead and match this up. And even though you have double-sided tape, you can certainly, throw a few clips on there just to make sure everything is good. You're not going to shift on you. I've got one thread right there I want to cut. Now, a hint is that whenever you're trying to ease two pieces of fabric together, always put the side that has a little extra at the bottom, on the bottom, okay? Because your bottom feed always feeds quicker than your top, even if you have a walking foot machine. So take advantage of that and let the feed dogs do as much of the work of easing as possible. Okay, so that fit in perfectly. So let's see if we can get this last little bit to ease in. And looks like we are good to go. All right, so again, I'm going to make sure, since the inner part of the bag, and I want to top stitch, obviously, like this anyway, and go around, right? But even if I didn't, I'm going to make sure that the side that seems to have a little extra room, a little extra fabrics underneath, okay? So we're going to go ahead and bring this to the machine, top stitch this together, and that will be the end of the bag. Okay, so let's get it done. Now, when I top stitch, I'm going to go ahead and remove my table, okay? I really want the free arm as much as possible. So I'm just going to pull that aside. Typically, you do not want to start in the front of your bag, right? You want to start in the back or on the sides. But in this case, this bag is going to be folding over, and I'm going to see the back more than the front, because the front is going to be underneath. So keep that in mind. I'm actually going to start right here in the front, which I know is really different, but that's going to be the spot where I see the least, and where when this is together, you're not going to see the front because it is dipped below the back. Okay, makes sense? So let's start right in the front. I'm just going to take it nice and slow. Okay, the seam is top stitched, and you can see here how that front dips down some. Again, that's on purpose by design, so that when we fold this over, you don't see any of that top peeking out. Okay, so let's take a look at this bag in the front camera and look at all of its features. Here's our completed Willa. Love this faux. This is amazing. Very high class, very designer inspired. Love, love, love it. So as you saw in the construction process, we have a great back zipper pocket. Both connectors are in the back, very on trend for fall. The zipper pocket, if you'd like to make it deeper, you certainly can, but it should, no problem, fit your cell phone or anything else you may need. Okay. I really like the way that the bag comes together with the seam in the front and the back. Certainly very different than a lot of other bags that we see. Of course, we know that it's got some really cool designer inspired features like these closure keepers that you see both on the front and on the back of the bag. Of course, inside, as we know, it has some gusset pockets, and the gusset pockets are specifically for the keeper companion pieces, or the companion pieces that we have to go with the bag, which is the fold and go jewelry case, the shade keeper, and the cord companion. So if you're just headed overnight, you want to put some of the essentials in a bag and, you know, go, this is it. Okay, so I hope you really enjoyed the tutorial. I love making this one. This is one of those bags that sometimes, you know, sometimes the simplest designs are the best. And a lot of designer bags have very simple lines and simple designs. And this is a perfect example. So the Willa, I hope you enjoyed the tutorial. And until next time, everybody, happy sewing.